And you know what? The hard part about that is you're absolutely right, but people think that that happens in version one of your offer. We have some clients that's like, oh, my messaging isn't dialed in. I'm like, your business has existed for 3 months. Like, no doubt,
Right.
right? Because you are just operating within the constraints of what you believe your audience wants right now. My company is 3 years into business. We've drastically changed the way that we've positioned our offer, the way that we've positioned our message, the way that we've spoken to our audience over the last 3 years, because we're in an experiment right now, right? Everything in life is just a constant experiment. So where people get stuck in that implementation is they know they should do something,
Yeah.
but they feel uncertain with the outcome.
Yep.
And so they try it once and they're like, oh, that didn't work, back to safety.
Guest today, not just a trailblazer. I'll say he's a trailblazer in PT, but somebody who's reshaped his career path sort of against some odds. We'll talk with our guest today about how they went from a burned out therapist, which I feel like, unfortunately, a lot of people listening to this or watching this can relate with, and then turned into someone who's an entrepreneur, teaching, in fact, going even further than that, teaching other people how to sort of redefine success in this healthcare profession. I like to call it, I almost said industry, but I feel like industry is super like machiney. And I like profession. I feel like we're professionals in a profession. I feel like an industry just feels cold. So Ray Gorman, welcome to the show, man.
Jimmy, thank you very much for having me. I'm stoked to be here.
I dig, if you're watching the video of this, I'm digging the artwork behind you. I like I like anatomical, simple black, pencil on white canvas. So that shoulder complex that you got there is cool. I like that.
That was actually a piece of artwork that I commissioned in a trade for some care back in the day. So
Listen,
it
man,
worked out well.
Listen, and not everything's got to be money. It's a trade of value. And you're like, hey, I dig what you do. So what do you got for me?
Give me a shoulder.
So you reshaped your career. I sort of teased the audience a second ago.
Yes.
Like and I mean, everybody's sort of got a superhero backstory. So some people laugh when I say, what's your superhero backstory? But I mean it, because everybody's sort of got one. How do you describe yours?
Well, I mean, I think like a lot of PTs out there, my original start of my career didn't quite go the way that I thought it was going to go, right?
Okay.
Like when I was a tech, I loved everything that I was doing as a PT tech. And then you get into the realm of physical therapy and you're like, well, I either get to choose to do the really cool stuff, or I finish my documentation. And so I actually felt like I lost a lot of the ability to do the things that I wanted to do, to coach the clients that I was working with. And I kept kind of searching, right? So I went from like a traditional outpatient orthopedic clinic. I went into sports medicine, right? I worked at the University of Nevada for a couple years. And ultimately, I just kind of found difficulty finding a model that really fit for me. And about a year out of school, I had started my cash-based clinic. I always knew I wanted to kind of blend performance and rehab, like a lot of physical therapists out there. But what I quickly found was, even in that model, I ran into the same limitations on a lower scale, right? Like it didn't become about seeing 15 clients in a day. It became about seeing 5, 6, and it didn't become about being in a clinic for 10 hours a day. It was still 6, 7 hours a day. And I was working with a lot of clients, a lot of athletes that they really didn't need to be with me in person, but they really needed my guidance.
Yeah.
And so it was like, why wouldn't I give them, something that ultimately got them the result? A lot of people are giving this away as a home exercise program, right? We now position the offer as what we call a prescriptive exercise program. And it was something that finally allowed me to package like what I was able to do in person for this client, and ultimately, in reality, like truly bridge the gap from rehab back to performance for them.
Yeah. What was the thing that gave you the right? Like we always look for social permission. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So like when you go to change something, when I left the clinic after going to PT school for 3 years, doing prereqs for 2, treating for 2 and then deciding
Yeah.
to not be in the clinic, I had to sort of like be okay with telling people that, and then me thinking that they're going to judge me, even though I'm the only person that has to wake up in the morning and look myself in the mirror.
Right.
So like, what was your, and I still deal with that to this day. Like, it's not like you get it and you're fine. It's not like that scene from Wizard of Oz where everything's black and white and then it's color. It doesn't go that way. It goes back and forth.
Yeah.
What was that moment for you? Or what was that thing that said like, no, I'm happier. And I think I'm happier and I give better results when I do it this new way.
Well, I think that there are like these seed moments along the way, right? These instances of things that had happened throughout my career, throughout my journey. And the first one for me actually started before I was a physical therapist. It was when I was in late stage ACL rehab myself.
Oh.
And I remember going into the clinic and being like, man, like I'm really just here so that they can check in on me, like make sure nothing's going wrong and then doing my exercises. But I'm an athletic guy. And honestly, what I'm doing in the gym is way harder than what I'm doing here just because of what the clinic looked like, right? There wasn't free weights, there wasn't ways to load up heavy. Like I've kind of been in the CrossFit space. So that was kind of that first seed. The second seed is like I had worked online for a while, purely online with a company where that's like all we did, right? So I kind of had this concept in my head that like, okay, if I could get results with clients never seeing them,
Right.
Like never actually seeing them in person, what would happen if I put my offer on theoretical steroids, right? Not real steroids. But you always have to have this moment of like, I'm just going to try it. Like, I'm just going to try to give this to somebody and see, can I get the results? And then it's like, wow, this is actually costing me some time. This is super valuable to my patients, to my clients. What if I charged a nominal fee for it? Oh, wow. Now they're telling me, like, they're giving me proof of concept. Hey, I actually don't feel like I need to come in anymore. Can we just keep this process going? And so I think the thing that you're kind of talking about is like, how do you quell that initial imposter syndrome?
Inside.
And almost every bit of imposter syndrome, almost every bit of anxiety that I think people feel in entrepreneurial space is removed by action in some direction.
Yeah. The more you do it, the more it starts to feel real, right? Motion creates emotion. And if you and I would say the opposite would be true. Lack of motion creates the lack of emotion or a lack of belief. But you've talked about the idea of this limiting mindset, what we get taught in school. Like, how do you think that affects our profession? This limiting mindset. I mean, you only have to look around and everybody doing the same thing that everybody else is doing, but with a different logo and different colors.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's so ingrained systemically how we are supposed to practice,
Right.
how we are supposed to behave, what we're supposed to tolerate as physical therapists. How we don't even have control over our own rates, right? Like if you look at the traditional model.
Right.
So there's only one way that we start to regain control from those things, and it's starting to break free from those limiting beliefs of this is just the way that we've always done it. Well, just because it's the way that we've always done it, does that mean it's the way that we always need to do it?
No.
Or is our profession really just behind in times where everybody else kind of seems to get more efficient? We seem to be the only profession that's going backwards, saying, no, we're actually going to give you more time for less money. Like, I'm cool with trading time. I think that too many people are like, never trade your time, blah, blah, blah. No, time is a valuable resource. If you're going to trade it, you should be compensated fairly for it.
Right.
Right?
Trading time for money 1-to-1 is limiting.
It's totally limiting, but you have to understand like why the traditional model built itself around the way that it did. It said, okay, well now we can see 4 clients per hour, and instead of making $100, we can make $400. Does the quality of care decrease that much? For some clients, maybe the answer is actually no. Like, right. I don't think that this is ever a cash model versus traditional model. I think it's who's the ideal client that fits in that model.
Right. It's all cash somewhere. I mean, Jerry Durham said that. He's like, dude, somewhere there's money being exchanged. I understand that you're not doing it or you're not swiping a card right there, but like, dude, we're all in a cash business. It's all money.
Yes.
We're not trading designs of shoulders and art of shoulders, shoulder complexes for everything. We're not trading, we don't go to work and then get a gift card for the supermarket. Like, we are trading cash somehow. So when I see people argue about cash based, I'm like, I think you guys are aiming at the wrong lever. That's not it's all money somewhere. It's being traded for value. If you work in outpatient PT, you interact with your EMR a lot. You deserve to have an experience that's seamless and integrates all the things you might need to do, like a patient portal, marketing automations, and billing, all in one, all at an unbeatable value. That's what MW Therapy does. Switching over is a breeze. Take a test drive right now and see what you could do with them at mwtherapy.com. And where's your PT career license taking you? Get a driver's license, you can drive wherever you want. If you're a physical therapist with a license, you can provide physical therapy wherever you want. That's what Jackson Therapy Partners is there to do. Extraordinary patient care adventures with Jackson Therapy Partners. Perfect for PTs eager to make their mark. Do what you want to do, where you want to do it. See where your skills can take you at jacksontherapy.com. And if you've heard about this thing, we've had it on the show before. It's called remote therapeutic monitoring. And it could boost your clinic's revenue and help more people. Those two things are good. Find out how Physiotech can help you do that. That is Physiotech at their website, physiotech.ca. That's physiotech.ca. Maybe boost your revenues, your clinic's revenue by $290 per patient per quarter now with Physiotech.
And the clearer that you get on your messaging, if you are trying to differentiate yourself, right? The more that you can niche yourself into, we help, like my company, we generally help the PTs that are in the performance realm, the PTs that, want to work with that healthy, active individual to keep them healthy and active, that have maybe lost part of their identity as they've become injured. Like, that's a huge part of what we do and where we lean into. Like, we're not going to do a great job for, somebody that's like a max assist client. We're not going to do a great job for somebody that really needs that synchronous care. But ultimately, like, we've got to start pushing the profession and pushing the individuals that we're working with, that like, it doesn't have to be the way that you learned in school. The way that they taught you in school is simply because that's the way that 98% of the realm,
right,
operates. And I don't want to be like 98% of the realm.
Yeah, we're arguing over how, but not what. And I think, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, but what you're selling, and that'll lead me to the next question, but like, we get real finicky over how, and it's like, I don't think people yes. don't buy how. How is a feature.
Yes.
People buy benefits. Benefits is a why. Sorry, it just is.
And a lot of people run into issues saying like, oh, well, my clientele doesn't want to be on a virtual offer. My clientele doesn't want to be on a blended experience. And when we actually dig into that, it's because that's like, you're not positioning the offer in a way that actually makes them want to be on it. Right. The words that you're using matter.
Sure.
The how it actually fits into your journey matters. And when you just try to bolt on this offer to the back end of your in-person process, like the problem's already solved at that point in your client's head, right? So that's why we have that unique mechanism, that unique language, which we're able to teach in our program of like, this is exactly why this thing works. And that was a formula that I was able to figure out, when I was practicing and really experimenting with this in live time, in real time.
There's some things that if you try to add it on in the end, it doesn't really work. And that, and it's like, and I use the analogy, if you're making a cake and then 96% of the way through the baking process, you realize you forgot to add sugar, throwing 3 times as much sugar at the cake will not make that cake taste good.
Yeah.
You're
correct. Like, don't sell a fitness offer to a client that is already consuming fitness somewhere else. Right. And that's a lot of times, I think, how the brain of PTs work, because we're trying to model it after like what we know as a profession.
Right.
And when you make that jump out of the traditional clinic into a cash clinic, you're really not dealing with the same consumer. They don't have the same type of problems. And that's why the offer that we layer in, it is not a fitness offer. It is a complement to fitness. It is truly a return to sport offer. And we've got to make sure that we can differentiate that.
Yeah. Going from clinician to business person is not just doing the same thing differently. This is a different job. This is why people go to business school and other people go to PT school.
Yeah.
And you should, but that's not to say PT shouldn't learn. There it is right there. Learn to run a business, because these are different things. It's not just now I'm PT and I'm going to slap business on top of it. But what are specific skills? I'll make you get specific. What are different skills PTs need to learn? Business is too broad, right? That's just like, that's an umbrella. What are the things under that do you see as things that we need to learn? And traditionally as PTs, we aren't taught, but maybe that's just because we're not exposed to them. What are we missing?
I think there's really three pillars of any business, right? Marketing, sales, service / fulfillment. What we generally see is PTs investing in the pillar that they're already the best at.
We do the exercises that we're really good at, and we get great at those. Yeah.
Like, I can't tell you how many PTs out there I've heard saying, "Oh, I just want to keep doing CEUs to hone my craft, hone my craft, hone my craft," and then they get stuck in this, traditional model pay ceiling, and then they wonder why they couldn't break out of that. Well, it's because you've only developed the skill of fulfillment when you were honestly probably good enough to invest elsewhere way sooner.
Yeah.
So marketing is all about, like, what's the message that we need to put out there to attract our clients? Sales is how do we get that client to really convince themselves that they have a problem worth solving, that they should invest their funds with us in order to solve that. And so many people are scared of sales. Well, I hate to tell you this, you actually can't achieve your mission unless you learn how to sell.
It's true.
And one of the big mindset shifts that we try to implement for our clients is, like, by you neglecting that skill, you're actually doing potential clients that you could help a disservice.
Right.
Because you're allowing them to go elsewhere to consume something that may not actually be their thing, just because you don't want to make yourself uncomfortable in the process. Right? We're protecting ourselves from that discomfort.
Right. I used the analogy before. My dad was a New York City fireman, and they don't have to run a lot of ads for the fire department. I don't know if you know this, but they don't even really advertise.
Problem awareness is pretty high.
I'll tell you what they do though. They educate the crap out of people. They go to elementary schools with a Dalmatian, and they talk about stop, drop, and roll, and when to call 911, and when not to add water to an electrical fire. So they do a lot of education. The funny part was when I shift that, or I talk to healthcare providers who are bleeding hearts, and that's a great thing.
Altruistic by nature.
You don't want to sell? Cool. All right. Let's take that off the table. You don't have to sell. Would you be all right with educating? And like, I love education is paramount. It's a pillar. And I said, so if you educate about the 3 most important things that this particular type of person should do, is that okay? And they go, yeah. And I go, and if you did that and you said, by the way, if you want to learn more or if you need this, I can help you do that. And they go, yes. I go, that's selling.
It's a step in the right direction every single time.
What do you mean? I was talking to somebody else about this. Like, if you ask people what branding is or marketing is, you get a lot of answers, and they're all different, but they're all kind of the same. And they're this. I like the one about marketing, and I forget who said it, but the answer was marketing is saying the same thing 1,000 different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Listen,
I talk about that all the time, man.
We're big dumb animals, and if you think that we need to hear something once before we understand why it's good for us and do it, then we'd only have to tell someone why they should eat vegetables, or a kid should clean their room, or why they should brush their teeth just once. Then, oh, you're telling me we need to hear it more than once. So I like, and you might appreciate this because you're a fellow healthcare provider. I like the parallels. Do you remember the FIT principle? I learned it as the FIT principle, and then they added on VP. So it's FIT, VP, frequency, intensity, time and type, volume, and progression. These are exercise principles. Yeah. And I'm like, hey, healthcare providers, those are communication principles. The same freaking thing. You're exercising a different thing. You are exercising this message over and over and over again because, and then I'll flash a slide on screen. I go, it's just 2 tin cans with a string between. You're just trying to get people to understand something. And that requires frequency, intensity, time, type, volume, progression. That's it.
And you know what? The hard part about that is you're absolutely right. But people think that happens in version 1 of your offer. Right?
What do you mean? Yeah, I agree, but I want to understand more.
Yeah, so like we have some clients that's like, "Oh, my messaging isn't dialed in." I'm like, "Your business has existed for 3 months." Like, no doubt,
Right.
right? Because you are just operating within the constraints of what you believe your audience wants right now. My company is 3 years into business. We've drastically changed the way that we've positioned our offer, the way that we've positioned our message, the way that we've spoken to our
Yeah.
audience over the last 3 years because we're in an experiment right now, right? Everything in life is just a constant experiment.
Correct.
So where people get stuck in that implementation is they know they should do something,
Yeah.
but they feel uncertain with the outcome.
Yep.
And so they try it once and they're like, oh, that didn't work, back to safety. We talk about the concept a lot of, delayed gratification in that like when I was learning sales, like I was willing to sacrifice 3, 5, 8, however many sales I needed to sacrifice to figure out what I needed to do and what I needed to say for the 100 after. And the same thing is true in your messaging. You have to put the post out there that nobody likes,
Yep.
that nobody shares, and be like, okay, what was it about that post that didn't work?
That's the hard part, though, Ray, that a lot of
Yeah.
people don't do. They fling it and then they go, social media doesn't work.
Yes.
You didn't do the
Yes.
dissection. Well, I did one pull up and I don't feel any stronger. It's like, okay, well,
Mm-hmm.
you have to go into this with this agreement that it's not one, it's frequency,
Yep.
it's over time, and you can do things better. I mean, once a week in radio, I would sit down with my boss and we'd listen to a show from the week before, and it was uncomfortable and I hated
Yep.
it. But man,
Yep.
it was the only real way I could, because the next week I was like, oh, remember last week he kept saying, you keep doing this. Why don't we try a different way? I should do that. That's the only way. You have to be able to. That's why fitness places have mirrors.
The best lessons that I've learned in business are not from anything that I've done well. They are literally all
Dude,
from failures that I've had
we
and
we
lessons
had
that I've learned, no
we had an
doubt.
interaction on Twitter. Somebody said something about failure or something, and then some other dude chimed in and he was like, somebody said, I love failure. And I was like, I agree with Nick. This guy's name was Nick. I was like, I
Yeah.
agree with Nick. I love failure too. And this other guy was like, well, you guys can have fun on Fail Island. I'm over here with Successville. And I was like, he doesn't. And then I go to Nick, I go, on Twitter. So in front of
Yeah.
everybody, I go, he doesn't understand that it was failure that got him there. And he's going to be stuck right where he is unless he starts to love failure a little more.
There was a quote. I hate when I quote stuff that I can't
I do
remember
that
who said
all
it,
the time. I do it all
but
the time.
like this wasn't me, right? It was somebody out there in the interwebs. But they said you don't deserve the opportunity for success until you can embrace the possibility of failure.
I like
And that has become so true. And the common trend that I kind of see in the PT industry is like we're so risk adverse. Again, we're taught in school like
failure's
do
bad.
no harm, right? Don't put your patient in danger, pick this safe exercise. And we've ended up like with patterns of underloading even clinically because of that,
Right.
right? But now think of how that learned behavior carries over into business. Well, if you're constantly worried, if you're constantly concerned about the downside, right? You will limit yourself from ever being able to experience the upside. So you have to start to reframe and say like, look, I've got to compartmentalize how being an analytic is really beneficial in one facet of my life, but in business, I don't always need to hyper analyze. Sometimes I just need to act.
Dude, some of the best ideas that work had like a 7% chance to succeed, but you were like, I'm going to try. Some of the best episodes I produce, I was like, I just going to put this out, but I don't think it's going to be that great. And some of the best, some of the episodes, I'm like, this is going to be banger. People are like, man, it's all right. And I'm like,
Yeah.
which just shows you that like you could be really good at something and then still be a student at it and be like, hey, some stuff happens for hashtag reasons. I don't know. And the only way to know is to do it. And the only way to do it is to do it in public, especially with like treating, pitching, anything.
Yep.
Or giving a presentation. I tell people all the time, thinking about your presentation, it's all right. Practicing your presentation, way better. right?
Yep.
Thinking about push-ups. Okay. Like someone pushed back and they were like, well, springboard divers think about what they're going to do. And I'm like, okay, I understand that visualization is a thing and it's good.
Right.
Do you think the springboard diver, is that all they do? They just go to practice and visualize a 2.5 tuck? No, they don't. No,
Part
they
of their
don't.
routine.
They do the right. It's part of it, right? But I'm not saying you get nothing from the visualization, but get out there and do it. Chuck it, as my buddy would say, who was a springboard diver.
And you've got to create systems and processes even around like your clinical client management, right? And I think that we've gone down the rabbit hole of like nothing matters and
Right.
you can do anything, and we've put a lot of providers in this mindset of like decision fatigue, like, oh my gosh, like what exercises should I use? Like my exercise library is massive, but the actual exercises that I select, the things that I use, the system that I've formed, it kind of stays within that bell curve, that central bell curve of like, most of the time I'm operating here. And when I see something that's like atypical, then maybe I'm going to go onto the tail ends of my curve.
Right.
So one of the things that we're able to offer people within our model is we're actually able to offer them a system that operates consistently from evaluation to prescriptive exercise program, because we're not just starting over and over from scratch. Like that's why we're able to create custom programs for clients in not a lot of time, is because the entire thing is systemized.
It's got to be a process.
It's
People,
got to be a process, right? It's got to be, when we see this, we do that. Now, I don't ever want to take anyone's clinical judgment away, but I want you to understand like that most of the time you're going to see these patterns are going to repeat. And if these patterns are repeating, like let's start to put together a little formula that makes your life just a lot easier and your content a lot easier too.
If you're onboarding an employee and you have to answer this question 10 times and how to do this thing in the website, create a screen grab video to do it. If you know, I've told friends who've launched clinics, I'm like, people keep forgetting exercises. I'm like, great, record them on their phones. All right, I do that, but I'd like something permanent. Great. There's a thing called YouTube. Make a Chinese food like restaurant menu where like, you know, you can call the exercises whatever you want, but give them a number. I want a number 8, do 6 number 8s, do 4 number 2s. Like do that. Well, we overcomplicate it. We over medicalize it sometimes.
And that was also like part of the rationale for me of like, why is there generally such a low compliance to, you know, what we traditionally know home exercise program, right? But what we really found was people pay attention to what they pay for. So a lot of the hesitations of physical therapists, chiropractors, whoever comes into our model is like, well, yeah, but we typically give this away for free.
Right.
Well, just because you've typically given it away for free, if now we're charging $200-300 for this, could there actually be a reality that because you are charging for this, there is a mechanism of buy-in to your client? And it's like, hey, if I'm paying my PT $300 a month out of pocket for this program, I better do it to get my results.
Sure.
And I can do it in my own gym. I don't need to actually go to the clinic. And we talk so much about wanting to create patients with autonomy, yet we actually have no processes that allow for autonomy.
Yeah.
Right. So that's exactly what we're now able to do.
That's a good point. Where would you say, if people want to find out more about you, like give me, where do they go? Where's the destination that they should go to find out more about you?
Yeah. So, I mean, our program, our model that we teach is called the Performance Provider Growth Model. I'm the most active on Instagram. You can always find me on Instagram. I love going back and forth in the DMs. That's at Ray Gorman DPT. And then if you want more information on our program, you can actually go to engagemovement.com.
I like your logo. Show the shirt. You got the shirt on. I like MVM. I like that MVM too.
Thank you. This is classic from back in the day. That was actually the name of my clinic as well.
Yeah. I like
and so we just changed the mission of the company.
That's cool. We have a section on the show called 3 Questions. You ready to do 3 questions?
I'm ready, man.
On the hot seat with 3 questions on the PT Pintcast.
All right, 3 questions with Ray on the PT Pintcast. If you could choose a superpower to aid in your PT career, what would it be? What's your superpower and why?
Oh, man. I think mind reading would be a good one.
Yeah.
Because so many people are withholding what is actually preventing them from moving
Yeah.
forward, right?
Yeah.
And that's a big part in the sales process.
Yep. What's a piece of advice from your past that's been a guiding light in your career? Is there something that stuck that when you heard it, it was that sort of epiphany?
A piece of advice from my past. I don't know if it was a piece of advice, but this was maybe a lesson that I've learned.
Yeah.
You've got to be okay disappointing people.
Ooh, yeah.
Like I think we run into a lot of people pleasing tendencies,
Yep.
and then we become the ones who suffer because of that. The biggest thing that I've kind of leaned into is being okay disappointing people when I know that it's the thing that I need to do for me, for my business, for my process.
You're not pizza and you're not ice cream. You're not going to make everybody happy. It's just not going to happen. I'm sorry. You're not going to make everybody happy that way.
That is true.
Third question and 3 questions. If you hadn't pursued physical therapy as a career, what other profession might have intrigued you?
Honestly, man, I would have gone the business route. I kind of got talked out of going that route and going the safe route of being a doctor.
Yeah.
I think like maybe a lot of people in the profession. So I wouldn't personally change anything about my path. I think that it was I learned a lot of great skills. But I probably would have still been in the business realm somewhere. I don't really know what other thing I would have done in that case. But
yeah. All right, that's 3 questions. That's brought to you by our friends from ATI Physical Therapy, leading the charge in the PT profession with clinical research. More than 900 of their clinics achieving top marks in CMS's merit-based incentive program. They're a team to join for career growth. Explore opportunities at ATIPT.com. Last thing we do on the show is the parting shot.
This is the parting shot.
It's brought to you by the Academy of Orthopedic PT. They have their industry-leading current concepts of orthopedic PT online at orthopt.org. Wherever you are in your journey, if you're like, I want to be a better orthopedic PT, but I need like the resource. Where's the guy? Where's the phone book? Kids, back in the day, there used to be a book full of phone. We'll talk about that later. But what's the phone book? How do I go from where I am to confident and competent? Maybe you want to take that OCS exam. That's what Current Concepts helps you to do. Find it online at orthopt.org. Ray, what's the thing that you'd want to? How would you sum it up? What would you want to leave with the audience for your parting shot?
I want you guys to know that we are a very valuable profession, and you have a ton to offer. And it might not seem like that at times. And there may not be a route where you see a path of going down the traditional way to get out of that. But there are plenty of PTs out there who have broke free of that system, who have taken a risk on themselves, and ultimately who have put themselves in a position to live whatever kind of life that you actually want to live. And if you have questions on that, like, I'd love to chat with you.
Yeah, we're past theoretical. People are doing this. People are doing this, and then there are people who can teach you how to do this, and then you go do this, and then be happy. Stop focusing on the how. Focus more on the what and the why. Ray, appreciate the time, man. Thanks for doing what you do, and keep up the good work. I mean, I think people should, jump on and see what you are doing on Instagram. Even if you're like, I'm not interested in doing this. Don't stop focusing on what he's talking about. Focus on how he's talking about it, because actually that's a good. He's taking what he knows, he's breaking it into 1,000 different pieces, and then having a little conversation about each. And that is how you multiply yourself in terms of content. Yeah, these little things, the recordy things, they do more than you think. They're a tool. So Ray Gorman, appreciate the time, man.
Jimmy, thank you for having me.
Yeah, they say the best conversations happen at happy hour. Well, thanks for coming to ours.